All right, good evening, folks, and I appreciate you folks that are here, and I know we're live streaming, so we got some folks watching us online. And, we come back from these mission trips, and we're all excited, and we're like, yeah, it was a great trip, and people are like, oh, it was a great trip, but you need to know more than it was just a great trip, and so that's what we want to do tonight, is we want to just spend some time sharing with y'all what the mission is about, and well, there she is, and what goes on there. So, and she wore a t-shirt, Michelle, she wore a team t-shirt. Whenever, so we are gonna have a fundraiser meal for Mexico, I don't want to steal your thunder, on September 6th, and that will be a wow meal. But recently, we had a team go to the Dominican Republic. I was fortunate enough to be able to go in February, and it was a great trip. But my trip really wasn't a mission trip. It was to go down there and see what the mission is all about. So it was really a whirlwind tour of their mission sites. But I'm going to let Lisa Barnett come up and talk about the Dominican Republic trip. And I think she has some pictures and whatnot. So Lisa?
And team.
Oh yeah, and team, of course.
No. All right. Is this working? Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone being here. Thank you to the team. Dan is not with us. He's visiting his father out in St. Louis. And a huge thank you to RH and Pastor Ramon, without whose help we would not have been able to do this. When Jill and Brian were here last week, Jill said something about trying to distill a whole year's worth of experience into just a few minutes, and I feel her, because we could probably talk for about 3 hours just about the 1 week that we had. I can do it. And Paul, so. But yeah, so Paul was part of our team, as well as Steve, Haley, and Dan that I mentioned. And I have to say, in all seriousness, Paul was a great sport for the week. So we appreciate him being the bit of comic relief, if we want to call it that. And we do have some slides to share with you, just to try to give you a feel for what it was like there, what our days were like, and the different ministries that we worked in. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's all right. So this is an eye chart. I didn't realize that, but this is just a little bit about Students International, the organization. They're in 4 different countries, 5 different locations, and in the DR at Jarabacoa, where we were, they have 12 or 14 different ministries that you see listed there. And this is a really cool organization that really is committed to meeting the needs of people where they are and just showing them God's love through meeting their basic needs. So it was really a great experience to minister through them. They have full-time missionaries like Jill and Brian and Owen that are there throughout the year, and then teams like ours go week or 2 weeks at a time to support those missionaries. So it really is all connected, the ministries that they do, and you're going to hear more about that from Paul, Steve, and Haley. So this was our travel day. It was a long day. We started out, this was after clearing, the first picture was after clearing security in Knoxville despite someone not having a driver's license. We managed to get through with the passport. That was Paul. That was somewhere in the air, and finally about 10 o'clock we arrived at the airport in Santiago, Dominican Republic, and about an hour after that we pulled in to the base, as they call it. I kind of called it the camp at Jarabacoa for Students International. I've got a couple of pictures of the base camp. The picture on the lower left was the dining hall. That's where we had all our meals each day. You can't see it in the picture, but there was an old-fashioned triangle there that they would ring every morning at 6:25. So we arrived about 11 o'clock coming through the gates. We had orientation, so it was about midnight when We were creeping into our bunkhouse in the dark where people were already sleeping. So it was a very, very long day. It started at 6:25. The next day started at 6:25. So they would ring the triangle, and we would kick off the day at 6:30 with prayer, and then we would have some quiet devotion time, and then around 7 a.m. we would have a small worship service or a message, followed by worship and singing, breakfast, and then we would go out to each site from around 9 to about 4 in the afternoon. So we did have a little bit of free time between 4 and 6 when we got back to the base, and then dinner at 6, and then evening activities at 7, and finally lights out at 10, and got up the next morning and did it all over again. So it's definitely a trip schedule that's built for young people. I was the cranky old lady in the bunkhouse going, shh, it's lights out, go to sleep. Because it was very, very long days, but very worthwhile. The upper right picture is the chapel. This is all kind of on the campus of Students International. And then the cabins are shown in the lower right. So there were about 12 people per cabin in bunk beds. So Haley and I shared a cabin with 10 other young ladies from California, the team was. And what is next? Next is Steve, who's going to speak about his ministry in microfinance.
You were doing so well. Why don't you continue? So one thing we found out when we went down there was this was a really different type of mission, at least for several of us. The mission trips I've been on before, we've gone down and we've built something, and it was a very finite period of time that we were doing things. These missions tend to go on for some period of time, and I was privileged enough to be part of the microfinance group, and our group leader is on the left-hand side there. That was Natalie, and then the students, myself, Ethan, and Monet, and then the young lady on the right was actually a summer volunteer. So, just to give you an idea as to what we did in microfinance. So they give loans to folks, and they're small loans, anywhere between 5,000 pesos and 80,000 pesos. And, these are to start small businesses and things like that. As I understand it, they have about $2 million outstanding in loans. So a lot of loans out there. And interestingly, they're mostly to women. So you've got men that are out doing work during the day, and the women, to bring in some extra income, are a lot of the folks that the microfinance ministry serves. So these are folks that are starting little small businesses in their homes or even little shops. And one of the great things that we saw, so I didn't know this when we went down there, but a lot of the Dominicans are living day to day. And, they go to work, they get paid for that day's labor, and then on the way home, they stop and get the food for that day, or, the next day. So they're not really planning ahead. And one of the things that the microfinance group does very well is teaches them about finance. So there's a lot of education going on, and we saw that quite a bit as we met with some of the folks that were taking out loans. And just to give you an idea as to the program features, so when these folks take out loans, the first 2 loans have to be what they call communal loans. So you can't just go in and individually get a loan yourself. You have to have 3 other people with you. And that's kind of their weed out process. They really don't have credit scores and things like down there. These people all know each other. They know whether the folks that they're going in on this with are going to repay the loans. So they're picking people they know are going to repay the loans with them, because everyone's responsible. So when they take out a loan, they end up having to pay back the principal, they pay interest, and then along with that, there's a mandatory savings feature. So they have to put money into savings. And that's part of the financial education that they're doing down there, trying to get folks to think, forward and what they're going to do in the future with that money. The loans they give out and they're 1% to 2%, which is, you can't beat that anywhere right now. And then the savings accounts that they open up, they get a flat 8% on those. So that really gets the people involved in savings. And it was great to go out and meet with these folks. So our typical day was meeting with some of the borrowers in the morning, and we would often go to their houses where they had their small businesses. We would do things like, one day we were baking bread, helping a lady, that was her business. She baked for the local community. She actually baked for the base camp also. And it was nice to meet and have fellowship with those folks. So when we went into their homes, we typically had prayers with them, helped them with their small business, and then socialized. In the afternoon, we had what were called bank meetings. So this is where we actually, got together and conducted business. But at the bank meetings, we'd go to a specific area, and all the loanees would show up, and we would start the bank meeting with some singing some hymns, and then each one of the students would have to do a devotion on a given day. So we had to develop the devotions and then present, and it was great to see these people participating in those devotions. I mean, they were really passionate, very insightful. I'm being told to hurry up here. And then after that, we would actually conduct the loan business. So the people would come in and they would repay their loans, and then we would adjourn. But hopefully that gave you a good idea as to what we did in microfinance. Paul?
Hello, Wesley, and wow, thanks for being here tonight. Thank you. Sunday night, mission kind of information here. A lot of people probably would choose to stay home, so thank you. I think you get points tonight in heaven for this. I think you probably earned some points, so thank you for being here. Lisa described the mornings for you with the devotionals, getting up around 6:30, devotionals, all that kind of thing. And after breakfast, I was a good sport, thank you, because no pun intended, I played baseball the rest of the day, and I survived that. I got to tell you, when it was all said and done at the end of the week, I was literally exhausted. So I did find out from this, I am not a spring chicken anymore. And in my former life, most of you probably don't know this. In my former life, when I first started my career, I was a baseball, football coach, and math teacher. So that was a few years ago. That's what I used to do. That's why I thought this would be a good fit for me. But those days have passed, let me tell you. But we were the 7 gringos at baseball camp. That's what we were referred to as, the 7 who came down. There were 4 of us adults and 3 teenagers that came down and made this trip. And basically, we played baseball and did all the drills and everything with the kids every day. Had a good time with that. One of our responsibilities was that right before lunch every day, after the 2.5, 3-hour morning practice with, by the way, 6 to 14-year-old kids, who are some pretty good players. And if you don't know, the Dominican Republic is a hotbed for baseball. As a matter of fact, I think around 11% of the players in Major League Baseball come from the Dominican Republic. So it's a dream for a lot of kids to play ball and make it in the major leagues. And some of them, as a matter of fact, they told us about one kid who we visited the house right next to where he lived, but he was 16 years old. He was 6'3", 215, throwing a 93-mile-per-hour fastball, and was going to be drafted by the Diamondbacks with a $250,000 signing bonus. So that's the kind of thing they're looking forward to down there. One of the things, so like I was saying, the gringos were responsible for was devotionals at the end of every morning session. So we were able to share that, and Dave Adams was our site director. Very interesting guy. Very no-nonsense, tell it like it is kind of guy, and he set the stage, I think, the first day because two of the teenagers, when he asked who's going to do devotionals, two of them said, well, we were going to do one together. We sort of planned this. He said, no, you're not doing it together. You're doing it today, and you're doing it tomorrow. Any questions? No, sir. So that pretty well set the stage for how the week went. He spoke, as a matter of fact, on Wednesday morning at our morning devotional, and pretty well laid the gospel out there, too. He's really an interesting guy and does a great job down there for him. In the afternoon, we spent time with the kids. They actually have a batting cage. I don't know if they've got that picture or not, but they have a batting cage for the kids, and so the kids would come there, or the ones that wanted to. This was like extra practice, and they would have practice there as well. A couple afternoons, we also practiced there on the field and did some things. And then one afternoon, for community relations, I suppose you could say, Dave took us all to get haircuts from some of the local Dominican barbers. So that's what I have here is my Dominican haircut, which it's about 3 weeks grown out since then. It was pretty short at the time. But it cost about 600 pesos. Oh, excuse me, 300 pesos for a haircut. So they wouldn't do that's about $6, just to give you an idea there. My devotional, I spoke about I asked the kids 2 questions. And by the way, when you're giving your devotional, you make a statement, and then Dave has to translate it for you. So it's a challenge to get all that done. But my devotional was about home runs and sacrifices. That was the first question. Would you rather hit a home run, or would you rather sacrifice bunt? Of course, all the kids said they'd rather hit a home run. And I took that and I talked about how Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, gave his life. He could have hit a home run. Satan offered him everything in the world. He could have been the greatest ball player. He could have been the greatest athlete. He could have had all the riches, but he sacrificed. And then I talked about how the 7 gringos that were there, and also Dave in the picture, and Samuel was the other assistant that you see on the right there, how they sacrificed. They could have hit home runs. They could have been doing other things, but they were here sacrificing their lives to give because of what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. A little bit about, let me finish up here. A few takeaways. First, the traffic was unbelievable. Motorcycles were probably the most common way of getting around, and they're 2-lane roads, and motorcycles are generally passing you on the left or on the right, going in between. But the interesting thing about it, people are pulling out in front of you. I mean, it's Keystone Cops, if you remember that old thought. But the interesting thing, there was no road rage. It was funny, Friday night I was driving with some friends down the road, and a motorcycle passed us real tight on the left and then zipped in around, and they went crazy. I said, you know what, that happens all the time in the minute. That's a way of life there. But there was no road rage. Everybody got along, helped each other out. They figured out it's okay. So found that sort of interesting. Something else I found interesting were the songs that we sang during the devotionals. I didn't know any of them. I still worshiped, and I didn't mind that. And they were great, and I was able to worship and praise God through those songs. But let me tell you, the kids that were there, the students that were there, they didn't have lyrics. They didn't need the lyrics. They sang every song. They were contemporary songs. They sang them. They were praising God. They were excited. Does that mean it's time for me to stop? That siren there. But I didn't know any of them, but I was still able to praise God because it was just amazing to watch these kids knew those songs and lifted the Lord up when they did that. Spending a week with Dan Hartman was a blessing. Folks, let me tell you, we have a godly man in Dan Hartman and his witness and his testimony. And he's not here tonight. He's with his dad, as well he should be. And so what a Christian witness, what a godly man Dan is. And then Brian and Jill are really, my hat's off to them because they gave up everything. Talk about a sacrifice. They gave up everything here that all these luxuries and all these things we have here in this country, they gave it all up, and they're giving their lives to that. And I don't think God's necessarily asking everybody to do that, but what a sacrifice they've made. So if you can find any way to support their ministry, I want to encourage you to do that. And one other thing I want to say, I met this really terrific Christian family down there that have been a real blessing to me. I just can't tell you enough. That's probably what I took back more than anything. The sad thing about that is I've been going to church with them for 17 years. But I didn't know them. And I would like to encourage this church to make an effort to get to know some of the people in the church. We're family here. I sort of hate to see y'all sitting all far away. I wish we could all come up here and be together like family. But what a wonderful Christian family is sitting right here. And you guys were a great blessing to me. I got to tell you that. And it's just a shame that we've been attending church together for 17 years. And I didn't know you too well, but I know you fairly well now. And I still like you, which is good too. Talking about support, I've decided to support Samuel. He asked me if I would be willing to do that. Another of the site directors spoke on one of the devotionals, and when he came to his time to ask for some money for support for his ministry, he started it out this way. He said, I know I hate this. I just want to apologize, but I need support from my ministry. If you could find it, but I hate to do, this is the worst part. And I told him afterwards, if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe in your ministry, never apologize in asking for money. Pastors never apologize to asking for money for God's kingdom. I think that's a travesty when we do that. Jesus was extravagantly generous. We're blessed beyond belief, and we saw that with some of the folks down there. Once again, realizing how blessed we are. Never apologize for asking for money for God's kingdom. So you have my permission to do that. So I am supporting Samuel. If you'd like to support the Solers or Samuel or any of the other site directors down there, then certainly you can have the opportunity to do that. Thank you. That's all I got. Was that 3 minutes?
And I should have mentioned, if you want to get more information on this organization, it's stint.com. You can find the different missionaries, all the different ministries, and you can also support some of those missionaries. So Haley and I had the opportunity during the week to work at Women's Social Work. I should have mentioned, I forgot it, I even wrote it down, but the Bible verse that we chose for our trip after a lot of debate and discussion amongst the team was 1 Peter 4:10, which is, paraphrasing, use whatever gifts you have been given to serve others. And those of you who sit around me in the morning service know that I can't sing, and Pastor says, make God listen to it, but the rest of y'all have to listen to it too. So I'm not gonna minister by singing. I'm not gonna share that gift. I can't really get up and preach. And when we looked at the different descriptions, one of them was women's social work, and it said they do crafts. And I was like, hey, I'm crafty, I can do that. So that's the one that we chose. Haley really wanted to do volleyball, but that wasn't an opportunity. But you can see the team that we worked with there on the lower right. Miss Daisy, who's between Haley and me, is from Colombia. She's been in the DR for about 20 years. And she said to us on Monday morning, God has called me to do this. And she said, I can't preach, I can't sing, but I can do crafts. And I was like, okay, I know why you sent me here. I got it. But she's just really an amazing woman, and we are supporting her as well, as Paul said. Anaya, the young lady on my right in the photo, wonderful young lady who is supporting herself, has had a really difficult life, and is about to graduate from Auburn, and actually while we were there became convicted, and she's applying to Students International to do an internship there. So I would ask your prayers for all of them. I'm going to give it to Haley, but that's the bus that we took to work every day up in the right-hand corner, and that was an experience, as Paul described, going through traffic on that. I was very glad I was not driving. And one day, on Friday, we learned to cook. We had a cooking lesson. And in this little house where we did the social work, it was just really a center where people could come and learn and do crafts and such that Haley's going to talk about. But we were cooking, and they just had kind of a propane tank hooked up to the stove. And we ran out of gas in the middle of this meal. And Miss Daisy said, okay, we'll just go get some more gas, get a refill. And I said, oh, can I go with her? Because I thought that would be really cool to see some of the community. And Miss Daisy went, no. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I found out why she said no, because she took the propane tank on her moto down to the wherever quarter store to get it refilled with propane. So that's the reason Miss Daisy wouldn't let me go. And then Haley's going to tell you a little more about what we did day to day.
So day to day, we did testimony in the morning, and we definitely learned about Anaya, and she really did have a really rough life growing up, but now she supports herself, and she is about to graduate high school, or no, she did graduate high school, college. But after that, we did crafts on the first day. We did painting, bracelets, in the morning, and then we did the older women in the afternoon, and we did crocheting. I learned how to crochet, finally. I made cats, so it's fun. But definitely one thing that I learned was the language barrier, but they're learning English, so I would try to speak a little bit of my Spanish, which is not really good, but I tried to speak Spanish, and then they would return it in English, and then we would help each other out. In the bottom left corner, her name's Flor, and she taught me how to make bracelets, and in return, I taught her how to paint, how to speak a little bit English, give her some tips. And in the top left corner, that was us doing crocheting. And the girl on the left side of me, she taught me how to do crocheting, so that was really cool. And then this top right corner was our entire group on the last day. They taught us how to play Dirty Uno. We did new card game called Steal Thief translation. And then on the bottom right, we had a dance. We did dancing. We learned more about bachata, right? The dance, bachata, merengue and bachata. Both of them, and then we taught them how to do some U.S. dances like the Cotton Eye Joe. We taught them how to do that. I taught them, and Anaya too. We both did. But the bus definitely was interesting. It's not like a normal school bus you see on the road or like one of those smaller buses. It looked like an Airstream bus, like Camper Airstream, but it was put in a bus perspective. But it was a really nice time, and the Spanish was, you would hear it really fast, so you can't really understand it that well if you're just learning Spanish, but it was a really cool experience. And one thing that I learned was, even though they would pray for us in Spanish, but it doesn't matter what language you speak, we all speak the same language in God, so no matter what, Spanish, English, whatever, they're praying for us, we're praying for them, and we love them.
Okay, Dan isn't here. He actually worked with Brian and Owen, so you recognize a few people in this picture in Appropriate Technology. And what this site does is it actually builds water filters for local families. So we've got a couple of pictures here. The upper left, they pour it into a mold. It's concrete, and they're pounding out the air bubbles. That's the inside of the filter, and then the first layer is gravel, and then there's a layer of some kind of sand, coarse sand, I think, and then fine sand. And basically there's some kind of bacteria, and Dan could explain this way better, as could Brian, but there's a bacteria that grows and eats the bad bacteria. So they can just get water out of even a river or their faucet and pour it through there, and it purifies the water, and they have drinking water. So Steve talked about how the whole culture is kind of living for today. They don't really think longer term, and the water filters were one of the things that they talked about that. The water filters cost about $20. They do charge $20. The culture does not want something for free, so they want to pay for what they give to you, what you give to them. So it was important that they have an investment of that, but they can go to the daily bodega kind of store and get food for a day, and that's what they get. Instead of getting a pound of rice to last the week, they buy a cup of rice because that's all they need for today. So they can buy bottles of water for a few cents or equivalent, and so they're mindset is to just, well, it only costs this much to buy the water bottles. They can't think, okay, I can spend $20 and have this and never have to buy bottles of water again. So all the different ministries kind of work together trying to get them to think about, beyond today and ultimately to think about eternity. So each of these ministries meets a daily need, a really basic need, and then through that shares the love of God with them. You might have heard Jill and Brian talk about how their sites are right next to each other. The picture in the center shows Jill's site. You can see a little kid there in the kind of patio area, and the yellow building is Brian's site. So when they say they're right next to each other, they are right next to each other. So they get to have lunch together, and Brian was sharing with us how the kids call him abuelo, which is grandfather. So he said it's a great break. And that shows the water filters up on the left curing, and then a water filter that's already completed and is producing water. We did have a fun day on Saturday. Steve and Haley got to go rafting. I just thought these buses were just hysterical, so I took a picture of those. That's Haley, she's second from the left and the one that you're looking into. So they had some beautiful experiences rafting. We talked a lot about, it looks a lot like home, a lot like East Tennessee. You can see the pictures there. Haley's in the orange shirt. Rafting on the river, and she really got to connect with a lot of the students that were there. There were about 40 other students and leaders there during the week we were there. So even though Haley was the only youth from this church who went, and I encourage others to go, she did have the connection with some of the other youth. And then Dan and I took a hike. As you can see, it kind of looks like East Tennessee. That's Dakota and Jen, a mother and son that we met that was there during our week that were just awesome people from Maryland. And there's another photo of, so Paul was playing baseball and skipping rocks. He had a really rough week. But I really love this picture of Dan because I don't know, I felt like he found kind of a little bit of peace right there. So that was a great moment. And we did leave our mark. Haley, each in the chapel, each team that serves paints a block, one of the cement blocks. So Haley designed this. She painted this freehand. I helped a tiny little bit with some of the lettering, but you can see how tired she looks up there in the upper right. This was on Saturday night after her day of rafting, and we spent some time in the community. And meanwhile, that's what the boys were doing. So, no, like I said, Paul was a great sport. He was, this is just kind of some scenes around the base camp, and I just threw in some pictures because it's just so beautiful there. It was hard to distill it down. But as Paul said, we really got to know each other as a team. I got to know Paul and Dan really well, and just you can't have any electronics. So when we got there that Sunday night at midnight, they took all our cell phones. And Haley didn't say a word about it. The guys whined a little bit, not gonna lie. But it was nice to just be, completely disconnected. And you just felt the presence of God just so clearly and so close. It was just really an amazing experience. And just some other pictures of the mountains. I told you we could talk forever on this. I'll stop and let the Mexico team have some time. But just stop any of us. I think I speak for our team that we'd love to talk to you more about it. If you have any questions or if you're thinking about going, we would love to talk to you about it.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, after the Mexico presentation, we can, field questions, and if people want to stick around and talk to some of us, that'd be great. Hey, if you've been to Mexico with me, come on up and sit up here, and then you might have an opportunity to talk. So we have here tonight Michelle, and we have Christy and Ray. Did I see Ashley? Is Ashley not here? No. Where are you going, Christy? Oh, Karen. Karen's been as well. Here, you can hang on to that. Just go ahead and have a seat, because I'm gonna do an overview, just a brief overview, and then Karen. Okay, so I'm just going to go briefly as I can. There's the mission trip is, we have some people that go down on a Thursday, and this is what we call the advance team. And this is materials that we left at the conference office, and we purchase about twice as much materials when we're there. We buy all of our pharmaceuticals there in Mexico. Christy has a pharmacy technician license, so that makes it easy to get the supplies. Next slide. And then so my job, Julie was asking, what's my job? My job is logistics. I get us there, I get us fed, I get us home. But while we're there, make no mistake about it, Christy Signs is the boss, okay? I'm just telling you, that's the way it is. So this is some of the advanced crew. You can see Alan back there. He couldn't be here tonight. Sadly, the woman on the very, very back, you can't hardly see her. I attended her funeral yesterday. She passed out while we were there. And, she seemed okay, just weak for the rest of the trip. 8 days after we got back, she went into the hospital for acute leukemia, did not know she had it, never came out of the hospital. So anyway, that's a sad thing, but now that we're all brought down. Next slide. On a Sunday, the whole team, and it's mostly Mexicans, okay? I want you to know that we rely heavily on our Mexican brothers and sisters. We head over to Ixtepec. We stop along the road to worship. We have our church service on the Sunday morning there on the side of the road. We're about 8,000 feet right there. Next slide is worship service. You can see Michelle there. The gentleman on the far left, that's my son, Adrian. He went with us last fall. So this next slide, this is a screenshot. You can't see it, I don't think. It's a screenshot of my map. Okay, we have 14 miles to go, and it's going to take 50 minutes. And that's not because of traffic. There is no traffic. In fact, check out this. This is a big charter bus that's wider than the road. So I'm not lying when I say that I medicate when I get on that bus, because I'm either going to wake up in Ixtepec or in God's presence, but I don't want to know how I get there. But as you can see, it's beautiful scenery. Okay, next slide. We have more pill packing to do. So when we get there, we buy our vitamins here. Vitamins are cheaper in the United States, and we don't usually have much problem getting them across the border. So we buy our vitamins here in bulk, but then we package them into, 2-month supply, 3-month supply, something like that we can hand out. We have adult vitamins, children's vitamins, and calcium for the women that we hand out. Next slide, this is Dr. Ilse Cedeno. She went with us the first time last time. She is a Mexican who lives in Germany and is a thoracic surgeon. And she gives of her time to go with us to do this ministry. Speaks 5 languages. And,
Like, to top it all off, she's an artist.
Yeah, I know. She's
Hard for somebody.
but she's got just a sweet, sweet spirit. Next, this is where the mission is. It's in a church. And we've got, this is Dr. Eric Coker over here. He just works right up the road. He goes to First Baptist. And so anyway, we've got him. The patient is there with the straw hat on. We have 2 other people because the patients don't speak Spanish. They speak Totonacan. They are indigenous people. So Eric speaks to a man who speaks Spanish and English. That man speaks to a man who speaks Totonac and Spanish, and that man speaks to the patient who speaks Totonac. And then it comes back around. So you talk about a language barrier. You got 4 languages being spoken, and it can get real chaotic, and kids are running around, and it is one of the most beautiful sounds in the world. I miss it so much when I leave. Next slide. Okay, kids, these people wait for hours to see us. They'll start showing up on the street at 5 o'clock in the morning. We got a whole bunch of kids. What do we do with them? Well, we usually bring 1 or 2 people dedicated just to work with the children and keep them occupied. Next slide shows this is the front of the church looking up the road. They hang a big tarp there to keep the rain off of us because it rains. And anyway, so these are people that are waiting in line to see a doctor. Next slide is the inside of the clinic again, just to give you an idea. And the next slide is foot washing. And we used to give out shoes, and we stopped giving out shoes because we found out that they take the shoes home and put them on the mantle. These people have never worn shoes in their life. They're 70, 80 years old. You give them a pair of shoes, they're not going to wear it. They're going to take it to be polite. So they don't wear shoes, but you know, they work in the coffee fields, they walk down the roads and all like this, and many of them are diabetic, and so there's a lot of foot issues. And Julie, this is what you'll be doing, okay? And I'm so proud of you for doing that. Next slide is also foot care. And then the next slide is a picture of Michelle showing us the proper way to wear a mask. No, I'm just joking. If you can't see it, it's underneath their nose. But reading glasses, we do work with reading glasses, and many of the women can't read, so why would they need reading glasses? Well, on a table out there in a narthex is some handiwork that I brought back, and that's what these women do to make a living, is they'll sell their handiwork. People like the indigenous artwork, and so you know, just to be able to do the needlecraft, they have to have these reading glasses. Next slide, we start every morning even before we eat breakfast with worship. So there we are out on the street worshiping. And you think, Paul, it's hard to preach in 2 languages? Try preaching when you preach it, then somebody interprets in Spanish, then somebody interprets in Totonac. You can't get a rhythm going there, you know, it's just really difficult. Next slide, there's Christy in the pharmacy. And next slide is, if that doesn't melt your heart, something's wrong with you. This next slide, okay, this woman, this is the typical Totonac dress. This is the way the women dress. And I just found it amazing that this woman, she wasn't wearing shoes. She's got the typical Totonac dress. She probably lives in a hovel, and she's got a iPhone. So that's what she's holding. So, it was ringing, and she couldn't find it, and it was in her cummerbund there. So next slide is Alan Winter, and he's given a devotion. That's my brother from another mother, Mike Cox, who is my best friend in Mexico. He's very Mexican looking, and his name is Mike Cox. I'm a white guy. My name is Ramon Torres. And when we introduce ourselves to people, they go, no, you're Mike and you're Ramon. But this next slide, Lisa Tiefteller, she's from Merville, and she goes with us on occasion. She's a nurse, loves the babies. Next slide, you know, there is a spiritual component to this. We pray with them. We share the gospel with them. We give them Bibles. Next slide, again, is just the clinic. Next slide is the pharmacy. Next slide, Skip, this is for you. This is Alan Winter, and this is Ascension, and that's a whole other story I told at men's group. That woman gave me 200 pesos to thank me for our service. It's $5. And she could have fed her kids for the day. And so some folks made a donation for Ascension, and we prayed with her, and it was really special. This next slide, this is Dr. Eric from down the road. This boy wandered in. He had hurt his leg. He was 16. He works in the coffee field because you don't go to school. You work in the coffee field. And he hurt his leg, and so Eric helped him out. And then we went to his home, and this is his home. It's a hovel. It's a hovel. No, you were in his home. That's his home. He slept on a blanket laid out on rotten wood. That's his home. They had a fire going in there. It's not airtight. It's his home. So we took up a collection and got them some stuff. Next slide. You guys know what that is? That's coffee. Yeah, you think it's all nice and pristine when you open it in your bag. Well, it dries out on the ground like that, so that's coffee. Next is just some of the typical women. We were down there for Cinco de Mayo, and the only place in the world that really officially celebrates it as a holiday is in the state of Puebla, because it was fought in Puebla. Look at this next one. This is, if that won't melt your heart, something's wrong with you. Next slide. Blood sugars, urinalysis are important. And so that's actually one thing I get to do, Julie, is I get to do urinalysis. Yeah, that's the job I get. So anyway, like I said, diabetes is rampant. Next slide is Christy and I having dinner with sweet Shirine. She's an indigenous girl who we befriended when we first started going there, and we've seen her literally grow up. We do get a tourist day. Next slide is me and Dr. Eric sampling churros. I know, RH, you find it hard to believe that I would eat food, but churros. Next slide. Speaking of eating food, this girl, you think she's little, okay? She can put the food away. Don't ever let her fool you. And I always say, don't ever eat at the roadside stands. You know where she's eating? I know, but shh. If you'd like to see an active volcano, come with us to Mexico. That is Popo, and it is an active volcano, and they were actually under quite an alert on our last trip that we went at the end of April, and there were some days it was so hazy and smoky, it would kind of start to get to you. And this is our team. This is a typical team. This isn't our last trip. It's the trip we took in October of last year. And if you look closely, you'll see more Mexicans than you see Americans, because that's the nature of the trip. We do the financing of the medical supplies, but they certainly do a lot of help. So, what you got to say, Michelle?
Well, that's loud. Well, I apologize. I didn't bring any pictures. But yeah, I'll comment off of Ramon's. So I didn't go on this last trip, but I went last October, and that was my second time going. I went again before that in 2019, and it was a really, really, really awesome trip. I really didn't know what to expect, and so what I did when I was there was I did the glasses, which you saw in the picture. So we give out reading glasses to mostly older people for reading or for sewing. And we'd have them test with like a needle and thread or a Bible or something so that they can see if they're able to see better. And it was really cool to see sometimes when they would be like, "Oh, I can see!" Like they'd get so excited. So it was really a lot of fun. And I'd always work with a different person at the glasses stand each time that I went on the trip. And both times, I made a really, really good friend. And the first time was this I want to say girl, but she's an adult, Charo, and we became very close, and we had a lot of fun just joking around. We continued to keep in touch since that last trip. And then this last October, I got to work with Zuri, which is a young lady, a little younger than me. And we became very, very good friends, and we would help each other with our English and Spanish, kind of like Haley was talking about in her trip. And we kind of kept up as well. And then I also, even though Charo didn't get to go on the last trip, I got to see her, and I got to see her hometown, which was really, really neat. And she made me eat crickets. That was interesting. I think I ate 2, and I'm like, okay, that's good. They're a lot better with hot sauce. But anyways. Also, I helped with the worship, which, as Ramon showed, we did worship every morning, and made a lot of friends there, and it was really cool working with the musicians. The first time we kind of worked with the local kids that actually grew up in that church, I think. And we would practice in this little old man's house right across from the church. And it was like that kid's. It was like a shack or a garage, you know, they slept, you know, it was very primitive, and you'd just be amazed that they live in that. And he was just so kind to let us use it every night to practice before, you know, the service the morning before or morning after. And and then the last trip I was on, we had a different group of musicians, and it was a little bit more like, what are we doing? Like, nobody knew who was in charge, but we kind of pulled it together, and we just were like, all right, let's just do this. And we had the guys who came. I don't know if some of you might have seen whenever the two guys from Mexico came and led worship with us here at second service. It was actually when they were all in Mexico, right? Or no, it was the week after. Yeah. So the roadside worship picture near the beginning, I don't know if you can find it, but it was those were the two guys. Yeah, Japhet and Fernando.
They work in Tennessee in the summer at a church camp.
Yeah, those two guys right there.
And so they
between
came
Adrian
here
and me.
and led worship with us, and they're going to be with us again this fall.
Yeah, they were our translators. We had just met them, and Adrian helped as well. He played guitar and sang with us. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was kind of mentioned before is you make so many friends there, and it was so cool after going in 2019 and then just having a couple of years off and coming back in 2022. It was like seeing family again. Like, you saw a lot of the people that you were with the last time, and everybody's just so sweet and so caring, and they're so excited to see you. And at the end, actually, I'm glad you pulled up that picture. That was something really special. That was our last meeting before we went home with everybody, just to recap on what we did. And it was really special to hear everyone just telling the stories from the week of the things that they encountered and the people they met, and then saying goodbye. And sorry, I'm almost done. Out of the corner of my eye. And it was just so special just to see what an impact in everybody's. There's not a dry eye in the place. Everybody's crying, and they're like, "We're gonna miss you," and they're all like, "We'll see you next time." And it was just really sweet, just to see how much of an impact it had on every single person who was involved. All right, Chrissy.
Well, me and these things don't work together anyways. But anyways, I was just going to share some of the numbers from our spring trip, because this is the fall trip. This fall will actually be my 10th trip to Mexico. So last spring, maybe, we saw a total of 730 patients within 4 days. We gave away 710 packs of adult vitamins. We gave away 1,719 prescriptions. We saw 78 patients in foot care. And, I don't have your glasses numbers. Ray gave away almost all of the glasses. I don't have those numbers. But that's just from the 4 days. And it's an incredible experience that I couldn't even begin to describe. But it is a very special place in my heart, and I appreciate all the support that we get from you and the opportunities to go down there. So, thank you.
Do you know what the number one prescription we give away is? Anti-parasitic. Anti-parasitic. So be thankful for your water.
We
Right?
gave around
Karen?
800 doses.
800 doses of anti-parasitic.
That's not included in
And
prescription.
sometimes we take some when we come back home just to be sure, that we didn't, because I did bring back a little friend one time. That wasn't for fun.
I'll try to keep this quick and short to the point. The Mexico Medical Mission Well, first, what I'd like to share about that is what I see in all of us that go down there, and specifically Ramon. You preached this morning about radiance and what's in a person's face, and the light in the world and the darkness. And I can tell you that I see radiance in Ramon's face when he goes down there. He's mentioned several times as we lead up to a trip about how he needs this, about how this means something so deep and personal to him. And from the time he sets foot in Mexico on Thursday, because he goes down with the advanced team, there is this radiance about him. Don't think that it's a cakewalk, because he said he's in logistics. And if you've ever dealt with logistics, you're pulling strings left and right to organize it and make it all come together. But the radiance he has is actually God working through him, pulling those strings. And speaking about pulling strings, there was a nurse that was up there. She loves the babies, was what Ramon's comment was. And her name's Lisa. And this past spring trip, I was in the eyeglasses. I was doing what Michelle usually does, but she wasn't there with us. And I think it was a day into it, Lisa stopped by and said, "Hey, Ray, I meant to in 2019, actually it was in 2020, the trip got canceled, but in 2019 I'd been given these eyeglasses. They're a prescription set of glasses, and you may find someone that needs them." Now I turned to her and I said, "Lisa, I think I know who needs those." And I had had a gentleman we're talking minutes before, who I'd gone through all the different reading glasses that we had, from a quarter, 0.25, all the way up to a 5 strength, and none of them would help him. And after talking through the Spanish translator, because I don't speak hardly any Spanish, and he has talked to a Totonacan translator, and the Totonacan translator had talked to the gentleman, and it had come back by, through the translators to me, that he was farsighted. He really needed prescription glasses. And I said, "Hey, go down and get that guy. He's in the pharmacy." And I was talking to Mike Cox, Ramon's brother of another mother. And so Mike went down, and Mike's a phenomenal guy. Words cannot express how this man knows how to talk to an individual and meet them at their level. Well, anyways, in talking to him, he hands him the prescription glasses. These are glasses that Lisa had been holding on to for almost 3 years. And he steps them out into the alleyway there, and he looks down past the tarp all the way down. He puts those glasses on, and he can see. Lisa had been holding on to those for nearly 3 years, and just happened to say, "Hey, Ray, I have these prescriptions. They were given to me 3 years ago. Maybe you can find someone who needs them." And it wasn't a minute later that gentleman was putting on those glasses. So talking about pulling strings, God is in this. And that's all I wanted to share.
Karen, would you like to share? No? Okay. Karen is a physical therapist, and we had one gentleman there, was it 3 years ago? Was it at 19? 2019. And of course, we didn't see him for a while because of COVID. But anyway, they carried him on a chair, not a wheelchair because they didn't have one. They carried him on a chair for about...
This is the only fall trip that she ever went on.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, they carried him about 4 or 5 miles, not on the roads, but up over the mountains to get him there. And he had a stroke, and he wasn't an older man, and he had a stroke. And Karen worked with him every day, and then taught his family the exercises that he should do. And we saw him on this last trip. And he's not up and walking around, but he's certainly gaining mobility. And it was good to see. So we certainly appreciate that. All right, so we have taken up an hour of your time. And I'm just going to open it up to questions for either team. So we'll just leave it at that. Any questions?
How long is your day in Mexico?
How long is our day?
Depends on who's in charge.
Well, you see, we're in the town of Ixtepec. The roosters don't sleep at night, And there's a man on the road that we live on that likes to play his radio real loud at about 5 o'clock. So it generally starts around 5 o'clock in the morning. People are outside talking anyways, and the windows are open because there's no HVAC. We have worship at 7. So, you got to get up at 5 if you're going to take a shower, because there's only so many showers and opportunities to take one if you're into that sort of thing. Some people, never mind, we won't get into So yeah, it starts around 5, 6 o'clock. We will have an hour and a half break at lunch, but we will work until 8 or 9 at night. And then we eat, and then we have devotions. So it's 11 o'clock before we go to bed. And it's not really any downtime. Yeah, what's that?
When we eat.
Yeah, when we eat's a downtime. That's really it. Other questions? Yes, RH? Well, there's some legends out there about my churro eating ability, but I can put them away, H. I can put them away. There is a story that I won't tell here about a eating contest I was on, not on one of these trips, but it was in Mexico on a mission trip, and how it turned out not so good for me. But anyway. Other questions? Yeah, Andy?
It's not a question, it's just I want you to comment on this. I want you to let everyone know that obviously not all of us are called to go on a trip like this, but all of us can go by helping out. Remind us how we can help.
Yes. Thank you, Andy. And there's some generous people in this church that really do help out a lot. Our pharmacy costs, that's our major cost down there. And if you can contribute towards the pharmaceuticals, that is a tremendous help. We go every 6 months because of chronic cases of diabetes. Now, we don't give them insulin because they don't have refrigeration, but we give them metformin and what else? What other pill form? Glucosamine? Yeah. So we do give them, but we try to give them 6 months, because what good are you doing someone to give them 2-3 months of this medication and then they're gonna not have it? And so blood pressure and diabetes are 2 chronic cases that we try to purchase enough that we, and then there's mental health issues. I've come to learn how bad it is, in particular for the young girls. We go there and sort of romanticize, this nice little town up here if that's all they ever have to look forward to, it can be very, very depressing. And so we tried to help out with that as well. So yes, we need help with the pharmaceuticals. Also, the transportation to bring this big team. We have to charter a huge bus and another van, because the bus doesn't always stay with us, and we're in this little town in the middle of nowhere. If someone gets hurt, we have to have transportation. Nobody in the town that we minister to or who works at the church has a vehicle, so we have to have a vehicle to get medical attention. Or if there's an emergency back in the States and someone needs to get to the airport, we have to have a way. So we have to, rent these things as well. Food is amazing. You would think food for this big of a team would be the major expense. No, it's pharmaceuticals, transportation, food. They just do an amazing job on a small budget. And it's not Mexican food. You think, we go down there and eat tacos all the time. Ramon would if he could. But no, these aren't Mexicans, okay? They're closer to Cherokees than they are to the Mexicans. And people say, their language, they must be similar. Not even in the same ballpark. No. English and Spanish are closer than Spanish and Totonac. Anyway, sorry, I got off track. So pharmaceuticals and transportation are our biggest expenses? Yeah, okay. And we do buy all the glasses. And the last time we tried to get our our reading glasses through the airport, we got held up by customs and had to pay what? $400 in taxes. And we never had to do that before, so we'll have to be we'll have to be, better at it this time. Oh, give ye them to eat is a ministry that works with us. Give ye them to eat is actually, they are a Methodist group, and it's not United Methodist in Mexico. There is no United Methodist. They are the Methodist Church of Mexico. They never joined the UMC ever. But they are Methodist. Give ye them to eat is a ministry that goes with us whenever we go down there, and they run educational programs about hygiene, about sexually transmitted diseases, about food preparation, about personal health care and things such as that. Dental, yeah, and help with dental as well. So, yeah, if you want to give towards that, if you want to give towards toothbrushes and toothpaste, or if you want to buy us a case or two of toothpaste, these sorts of things. And actually, probably in another couple of weeks, Christy and I will have this list. You don't know this yet because you weren't the secretary last trip, but you're going to be like, we're going to come in, Michelle, buy this, Michelle, buy this, Michelle, and you're going to be on Amazon buying all this stuff. So, in another couple of weeks, we'll have the wish list of stuff that we bring. We bring 2 suitcases. One suitcase is just mission stuff, and the other, for 10 days, is all of our what we might need, including towels, sleeping, and whatnot. So, yeah, come see us, and we'll have this wish list for you. Thank you, Andy. Others? Yes, John?
I just want to say on behalf of everybody, the mission committee has funds that we're sort of in charge of. And we support whatever needs in mission. We allocated a bunch of money to the local feeding homeless ministry this past week, the SAC Pack. A lot of times, to Andy's question, is they're saying, what can I do? If it goes in the mission fund, any one of these teams or any one of our local ministry missions or whatever, all they have to do is come to us and say, hey, we need it. And that money is there to be distributed. I'm particularly one of those guys, like, I don't think money ought to be sitting out there, it ought to be spent for a purpose. This past week, we allocated $2,500 just to local missions. But we've allocated to Mexico, we've allocated to the DR. So if there's any sales that what can I do? Go to the mission fund and anything that any of these teams need, the mission fund's got it there for it. By the way, if you ever have the opportunity to go, we always think we go on these mission trips to help others. I guarantee you, you'll come back feeling like you've been more helped than you helped. It's humbling. And it also gives a huge insight just how easy we have it. It's a humbling experience.
Thank you.
Don't hesitate to take a chance.
Thank you. And if you want to give, you can always help finance a person's trip. It costs about $2,000 to go to the DR. Right now, we're charging $1,800 or $1,750, something like that, to go on our trip. And the bulk of that is the airfare. But part of what we pay goes for pharmaceuticals, goes for these other things. So yeah, if you feel generous and you'd like to help somebody, let's see, from this church going in October, it'll be myself, be Michelle, be Ray, be Christy, and Julie Owen. If y'all don't know Julie, say, hey, Julie. There's Julie. Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to introduce myself really quick, actually. So my name is Julie Owen. My husband and I moved here from the state of Maine a few months ago. And we've been coming to the church. My husband started working for the church. Sound guy. And I just want to say that, God has really opened so many incredible doors since we've come here to this church. My lifelong dream has been to go on a mission trip. 2 years ago today.
She's already done.
The
what God wants for me, not what Julie wants for me. And when I came here to this church and I started hearing about the missions, and I happen to speak Spanish too, by the way, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, this church is really on fire for missions. And so God has really opened the doors just by us following him, by me following him over the past 2 years since, he really got my attention that it's not the work you do at your jobs every day. It's not, going back and forth to the grocery store. It's what we're doing, for Christ, and that we're going out and we're making a difference in people's lives and we're sharing Jesus with them. And so I just want to say I'm really honored and excited, and I am so excited to wash people's feet because, that is one of the most humbling things we can do is to serve people in that way. And God has humbled me so much in my life that when Pastor Ramon was like, can you do feet? I'm like, I'll do feet. And I was like, can I paint their toenails? But no, I just really wanted to say that I'm really blessed to be here. My husband is really blessed to be here. And I'm really excited to go on the trip. Please do pray that my passport comes in on time. We submitted that application, paid to expedite it, but I already know God's got that coming. So, but I just wanted to thank you all for that.
Thank you, Julie. Really excited about you going. When she asked if she could go, I knew that our team was already full, and I knew we only had one job left, and I knew that was washing feet. And I just said, Julie, we only got one thing left, and that's washing feet. And I'd love to do that. And she said that as sincerely, I'd love to do that. I'm like, oh, I'm not worthy. Other questions? All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. I'll wrap it up with a prayer, and then we're going to hang out. And if y'all want to come up and ask questions, feel free. And I appreciate it, and I hope that you will support us in the youth. If you guys get some youth involved going to the DR, hopefully that's not going to be a one-time trip for us. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you that in your wisdom that you establish the church to be your hands and feet at work in the world. And I give you thanks, Lord, for this particular congregation that is so faithful in its ministry, whether it's overseas, whether it's in the homeless camps, whether it's right here handing food out, whether it's ministering to children or youth, however it is, I am so thankful for this congregation. And Lord, I pray your blessings upon all of its ministries, SACPAC, mission trips, preschool, all of its ministries, Holy Spirit. And just be with those who lead in those ministries, be with those who support those ministries. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Thanks for coming, folks.